Hello there, folks. My name is Ash of the channel Fiction Addiction, and well, to cut right to the chase, I am a huge Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man was the first superhero whose adventures I followed regularly, and he was always the most relatable to me. I've always adored his street-level, colorful superhero shenanigans, and I probably always will. Now, there have been many animated Spider-Man shows throughout time. There's the meme-malicious 1960s Spider-Man series, the almost never-mentioned 1980s series, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which I personally don't remember as all that amazing, Spider-Man the Animated Series, Spider-Man the New Animated Series, Spectacular Spider-Man, which certainly lived up to its name. Frankly, at this point, there seems to be more spiders in our superhero media than in freaking arachnophobia or eight-legged freaks. But I thought it was only fitting to talk about the show that most people overlook at best, or try their very hardest to forget at worst. That being the oh-so-creatively titled Spider-Man Unlimited. No, not the phone game! God, there really aren't many Spider-Man titles to go around, are there? In this series, J. Jonah Jameson's son, the astronaut John Jameson, sets off into space to investigate a recently discovered planet called Counter-Earth. Unbeknownst to him, however, the symbiotes Venom and Carnage hitch along for the ride, despite Spider-Man's attempts to prevent it. When John doesn't return home and Spider-Man gets framed for having sabotaged the spacecraft, he decides to go to Counter-Earth himself wearing a more advanced suit in order to bring John back home and clear his name. However, Counter-Earth turns out to be fairly different from our Earth. Spider-Man discovers that John has fallen in with a group of rebels that fight against Counter-Earth's leader, the High Evolutionary, who has populated the world with animal hybrid people called Bestials, as you do, that oppress the human race, with 4 particular Bestials called the Knights of Wundagore, consisting of Sir Ram, Lady Ursula, Lady Vermin, and Lord Tiger, serving as his generals. Since John makes it clear that he won't come home until the humans are free, Spider-Man sticks around as well, getting a job at a newspaper similar to the Daily Bugle, because that's the one Spider-Man stable a show about him can't do without, and shacking up with a single mother named Dr. Naoko Yamada-Jones and her son Shane. But neither he or the rebels know that behind the scenes the symbiotes seem to have their own plans with something called the Synoptic. If all that sounds like a mouthful, it's only because it is. I'll just come right out and say it. Spider-Man Unlimited is not remembered fondly by many for a multitude of reasons that I pretty much wholeheartedly agree with. The main reason most people didn't like this show when it came out, and it is often mocked today, lies with its story and its setting. While it still technically sees Spider-Man swinging through New York and fighting bad guys, it was so radically different from anything else people had been used to seeing Spider-Man do in comics as well as in the beloved Spider-Man CAS. It just came as a shock to most viewers. Now, I am all for shaking up the formula a bit, and to be fair, the show didn't pull all of these things out of its ass completely at random. The concept of Counter-Earth as well as the High Evolutionary and his animal hybrid followers are from the comics, and I definitely applaud the show for having the stones to adapt some aspects of the comics that most other media adaptation either find too strange or directly ignore, such as John Jameson turning into Man-Wolf and the heroic robot Machine Man X-51. But none of it is really associated with Spider-Man, and it especially doesn't really gel that well with the Peter Parker character. See, the way I see it, the reason Peter Parker connects with people is that outside of his superhero life, he largely lives in the real world. He's a regular guy with regular troubles that he has to balance with his extreme circumstances, and with every choice he makes in one aspect of his life having an effect on his situation in the other. He was always meant to be seen as a character everyone has been, or at least felt like at some point in their lives. Because of that, thrusting Peter straight into a more futuristic setting under the iron-fisted rule of a psychotic dictator, where he has to outright join a group of rebels, comes off as really jarring and tends to go directly against his core appeal. And it doesn't help that the series is trying so hard to come off as being darker and more dramatic than its predecessor, without actually adding any more meat to its stories, and still having the breakneck noisy pace of other cartoons of the time, like it thinks the audience is incapable of paying attention if someone isn't talking. Granted, Spider-Man CAS definitely did that too, but at least it usually had a story to tell and some characters you wanted to see to go with it. Here, none of the characters have much going for them outside of which side of the conflict they belong to, along with one base character trait that is then supposed to define them somehow. The rebels have John, who's the leader, Karen the sassy chick, Bromley the older guy, Git the silent mysterious one, and X-51 the robot with a heart. And Naoko and her son are just the people that need to exist to convince Peter that Counter-Earth needs saving too. Whoop-de-frickin-do. They never get to do or be anything else, but the cheesy dialogue keeps wanting you to think they're somehow deeper than that. The show tries to give each of them a bit of backstory and a focus episode, but none of them ever really explore them or give them motivations that go beyond, hey, the High Evolutionary and his goons are total pricks. Speaking of which, they're not really better off either. The High Evolutionary supposedly creates this society of animal people because he considers them less flawed than humans, but plenty of them are still criminals, they're almost all viciously racist against humans, and he himself is human. Yet somehow no one ever brings up this extreme hypocrisy, and he spends most of his time sitting back and barking orders at the Knights of Wundagore anyway. And you can pretty much boil those guys down to a-hole scientist, Sir Ram, brawler chick, Lady Ursula, sultry chick, Lady Vermin, and somewhat noble villain, Lord Tiger. Hell, Lord Tiger is the only one who is a little interesting, because he's the only one who as much as considers that maybe the High Evolutionary is being a bit extreme. But the show very rarely lets him act upon it at all. How am I supposed to care what they do here? I mean, I know that this is a 90s cartoon and things were usually kept a little bit simpler at the time, but these aren't characters. They're concept post-it notes that somehow got a model sheet and they never move beyond it. To the show's credit, however, it does have a few cool ideas, like the concept of the symbiotes working on something bigger behind the scenes for it being called the Synoptic, even if I have a hard time seeing Carnage and Venom cooperating, and introducing counter-Earth equivalents of already existing characters. They still don't have much going for them, but seeing heroic versions of the Green Goblin and Vulture is definitely interesting, even if at a glance they're so identical it's hard to tell who's who when they appear in the intro. When it comes to the animation, I gotta say I love the art style though. The thick, heavy black shadows make every image and its colors really pop and definitely brings to mind comic books of the 80s and 90s, complete with things like little narration boxes that let us know when the scene changes. It's a pretty neat look, so it's a shame that it's overshadowed by everything being horrifically over-designed. I mean, look at this stuff. Why is Bromley wearing that stupid tie? Since when does Carnage need to be covered in ridiculous spikes to be scary? How the hell did they manage to make Electro look more ridiculous than he already does? Why does the High Evolutionary look like a Skeleton Warriors reject when he had a perfectly good design already? What? Pink is a totally legit villain color. At least with this he'd look unique. So basically, Spider-Man Unlimited tried to pull a Batman Beyond by thrusting our hero into a darker, more futuristic setting. And frankly, I don't think it's a coincidence that this premiered 9 months after Batman Beyond did. But where Batman Beyond knew that having a futuristic Batman didn't necessarily mean throwing Bruce Wayne headfirst into a new setting against adversaries that weren't a great fit for him, Spider-Man Unlimited attempted to cram Peter Parker into a dystopia like a toddler trying to fit a square brick into a round hole. If only Marvel already had a futuristic, darker Spider-Man that didn't have the hang-ups of Peter's established characteristics, and oh wait, they did! You gotta wonder why, if they wanted high-tech, edgy Spider-Man, they didn't just adapt the darker Spider-Man 2099 series. It seems a perfect fit. In fact, according to some sources, that was originally the intention, but was instead changed to give us the mess we know today. And I really don't understand why. Granted, the 2099 setting could get very dark, but it's not like adapting gritty material to kid-friendly cartoons was a new concept at the time. Spider-Man Unlimited only lasted one 13-episode season, and sadly ended on a cliffhanger that actually seems to promise one of the more interesting turns of the show to come. And who knows? Given more time, it might have eventually found its footing. Now, to sum things up, while I don't particularly like this show and definitely think the team behind it missed the mark, I don't think this show is terrible. Like I said, I like the art style and it delivers some perfectly serviceable superhero action with a few fun ideas thrown into the mix, even if I feel like they never get properly developed. So if you're a fan of the show's design style and its setting, it's probably worth a look. I just still don't feel like this should have been a Spider-Man show, or at the very least, not a Peter Parker show. But hey, those are just my 2 cents. So, how do I get back to my channel?
Hey man, I've been trying to figure that out for a few weeks now.
Hey viewers, be sure to check out more videos over on Fiction Addiction's channel. You can also follow him on most social media sites, and feel free to leave a comment down below about the video, and be sure to stay tuned until next time.
And remember to subscribe to Cartoon Watchers as well to see various reviewers from across YouTube give their own 2 cents on all the cartoons you can handle. Thanks for watching.